Hamidakuyepi, Chantewashtea Nape Chiuzapi, Nacole Walker and Machiapi. My name is Nacole Walker. I am Prabaksa Dakota and Sihasapa and Hunkbapra Lakota from Standing Rock. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Victoria, focusing on Indigenous language revitalization.
Haumitakuyepi, Chantewashtea Chiuzapi. I greet you with a heartfelt handshake. This is Elliot Bannister. I'm the Tribal Digital Humanities Specialist at the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, where I've worked since 2017.
Hamidakuyepi, Tasha Hauff and Machiapi. I'm Minikaju and Oglala Lakota. I'm an independent researcher and consultant, and I work closely with Standing Rock Iapi.
Daya Hipi, thank you for being here. Our talk today is titled A Story of Stories, How Standing Rock Created its Digital Language Archive.
Our presentation today will outline some of the major issues with the way museums, institutions of higher education, and individual researchers have collected and curated Dakota Lakota language materials over the decades, primarily in regards to accessibility and sovereignty over these data. Such issues are not unique to Dakota Lakota contexts, but are in common with other Indigenous communities, as the growing body of research and activism around Indigenous data sovereignty demonstrates. More importantly, we will detail how Standing Rock is intervening in these contexts in a way that meets our unique community needs and that can be replicable in other Indigenous communities. This is our Wóoyake project. Wóoyake means stories within and around the text corpus. Finally, we will present a series of stories to demonstrate how work is cataloged, worked upon, and shared today and into the future.
We'll start with a brief and non-comprehensive history of Dakota Lakota recordings. By that, we mean real-life language as used by fluent speakers and documented in sound or text, as opposed to pedagogical materials. And by the way, if you have any Dakota Lakota language recordings, please let us know, and we'd love to work with you. So, since the mid-19th century, our people have been writing our language and publishing these writings in various newspapers and presses. The earliest audio recording probably began in 1910 when Francis Densmore documented the songs of Standing Rock and elsewhere. As technology developed, more and more audiovisual material was gathered by the University of South Dakota in the 60s, Colorado in the 70s, some of which we can access, although Regina Pustet's recordings from the 90s seem to have ended up in Germany. All around that time, the Lakota Language Consortium had started their documentation work. There have been tribal projects like the Berenstain Bears into the 2000s and Dolores Taken Alive's radio show in the 2010s. These are more recent examples. When the three of us began our research in 2017, we really had no idea about the breadth or the depth of what had been recorded in Dakota Lakota, despite decades of language study between the three of us.
And we didn't know about them because of basically various barriers that existed and that are still a problem today. One of these barriers is that the stewards of such materials tend to be huge higher academic institutions from which Indigenous people have historically been excluded. This here is the Library of Congress that we see. Another is that such materials may be poorly cataloged because the stewards don't necessarily understand them. And even if they are described, are they searchable by members of the language-speaking public? Number 4, once they've been tracked down, how easy are they to access? Does the institution insist on working with only one designated official from the tribe? Does the requester have to fill out a pile of paperwork? 5, unbelievably, some institutions have charged the tribe for access, even for material that is already digitized. And these issues create major hurdles for language revitalization work and are part and parcel of that colonial mindset around knowledge sharing, which conflicts with Dakota Lakota knowledge sharing values.
So what are these knowledge sharing values and how do we apply them to our recordings? The first is a conviction that our language must survive and flourish into the future. In light of the attempts to exterminate our language, these recordings have become an ever more precious resource that can help transfer language to today's generation. Another value is that language and culture shouldn't be separated. That means that there are cultural contexts that are more appropriate for sharing knowledge than others. Sometimes these manifest as competing needs when thinking about access. Should this audio recording be available to all Lakota people or only some dancers? Or should this Iktomi story only be available in the wintertime? In the end, we as community members are the ones who should be answering these questions, and our Wóoyake platform allows us the ability to do this.
Wóoyake.org is at its core a community builder. It builds community through the twin projects of rematriation and sharing. Wóoyake rematriates Dakota Lakota recordings and texts, seeking them out, bringing them back home digitally, and recataloging them to correct errors and to ensure that the metadata truly serves the interests of our community. Wóoyake shares these recordings and texts according to Dakota Lakota values and needs. We use Mukudu's user configuration design to replicate those real-life knowledge-sharing protocols within our site. By default, most items are accessible to any member of the Standing Rock community, and we hope to expand this to other Očhéthi Šakówiŋ communities in the future. But we're also helping families curate their own private collections. So through rematriation and sharing, Wóoyake strengthens community. The community becomes part of the collaborative workflow to transcribe and translate the recordings. They can curate their own content, and pretty soon they'll be able to contribute to a Wóoyake blog as well.
For the rest of this presentation, we'd like to present ways Wóoyake intervenes in the colonial archiving model to better uphold Dakota Lakota values by presenting 3 stories concerning my fourth great-grandpa, John Grass II. His Lakota name was Wóoyake, and he was a Sihasapa Lakota man who lived from 1836 to 1918 and led delegations to Washington, D.C. to advocate for Lakota rights.
The first item is an honor song by Shoots First, sung in honor of Wóoyake. This was recorded by Francis Densmore in 1912. We came across the song while trying to unpack this collection of Densmores at the Library of Congress. Their entry, as we can see, is far from perfect. Going clockwise, the only name featured is Densmore. We don't see the names of the Lakota singers she recorded. The title of the entry uses names that we don't really refer to ourselves as, and this single entry on their catalog is supposed to cover all 213 sound cylinders that she recorded. Lastly, these recordings are not readily available, but can only be requested if you happen to be on site in Washington, D.C., or as we did, by paying the fee to be sent the digital files. On the other hand, on Wóoyake.org, we have identified the 200 plus individual recordings and given them each an entry on the Wóoyake website, which looks like this. Starting from the top, everyone who is eligible can log in to hear the recordings. The audio is synced to a transcript and translation to help people learn. And in the metadata, we have properly attributed the creators of the recording. Densmore was involved, but the voice that you're hearing is Shoots First, and Robert High-Eagle did the translations. Further into the metadata, we have used traditional knowledge labels. And by the way, if you don't know these, please check out the work of Local Contexts who created them. These labels help indicate real-life access protocols. In this case, reminding people to use it non-commercially and not to sell it in some way, and to keep it within the community so that some DJ doesn't end up playing it at a rave or something. We also credit who has been involved in the text curation and provide a space for ongoing community interaction, resulting in better transparency and inclusion. By cataloging and contextualizing the song in this way, Wóoyake makes the song more accessible to Dakota Lakota people and in a way that upholds Dakota Lakota values. Wóoyake is one of the increasing efforts to bring new life to the aspects of Dakota Lakota language and culture. Another is the re-recording of the song in the Densmore Repatriation Project. Here we can see Kendall Little Owl's re-recording of that song 110 years after the original.
Another item on Wóoyake is the speech Wóoyake gave in Detroit on August 2nd, 1904, and published in the Iapioaya newspaper, which provides insight into how he viewed the state of Indian affairs at that time. According to WorldCat, the nearest physical copies seem to be at the University of Colorado Boulder, where they have 68 years of newspapers on 13 microfilms. The Minnesota Historical Society had taken it a big step further. They re-digitized the papers, made them available online, browsable by issue, and even ran optical character recognition, or OCR, on them to facilitate search. Although the quality of the OCR isn't great, and it only facilitates search in the original orthography of the paper. More recently, Wooyake has made the newspapers more accessible to today's Dakota Lakota community in multiple ways. We have combed the papers for articles and letters of interest and given each its own entry on the website. We have transliterated the article into a consistent orthography, facilitating search, while still allowing users to view the original spelling. We have synced this to the original facsimile so that users can experience the historical nature of the text. And we've produced short English summaries that will further help learners find content that interests them. Here you'll see that we have another primary source image to help contextualize the recording, in this case, the building where my grandfather made his speech. Below that, you find item level keywords that will connect users to thematically similar recordings, as well as when and where the recording was created. Finally, you'll notice at the bottom our copyright notice. To make a long story short, the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe is mobilizing its tribal sovereignty here by relicensing existing materials for use in the community, upholding the copyright of our fluent speakers to materials that they've created, and protecting the derivative works that we produce. For many of the texts on the site, we've included line-by-line translations, but we don't have one yet for my grandfather's speech. But another element of the project is a collaborative space for translating these never-before-translated materials. This is one of the new exciting things that we're doing with the archival material rematriated and shared by Wooyake.
So these two disparate materials, an inch of microfilm in Boulder and this wax cylinder in Washington, they have a common denominator in Nacole's grandfather, Wóoyake, but you wouldn't know it from the limited cataloging that existed before Wooyake. So these human connections, we honor them by dedicating a page to each person within the archive to varying levels of detail. Here is the page we created for Wóoyake, which includes a beautiful photo of him, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Underneath that are a list of recordings which feature his words, and then a list of phrases in which he is mentioned from across the catalog. The info panel on the right includes his Dakota Lakota names, spelled consistently to facilitate searchability, and identified by dialect where applicable. And in that same panel, the places where he entered and left this world, and those are linked to place pages, which again have their own lists of recordings that are created there or that mention those places. And this helps rebuild our understanding of those relationships that exist between our human relatives and the land. So this is where we came to find that photograph that you just saw. This is the site of the National Anthropological Archives, where the information is limited just to the photo itself. His Lakota name is badly spelled. He's even given an incorrect tribal affiliation. Wóoyake was not Pikuni Blackfeet, but he was from the Blackfeet band of Lakota, the Sihasapa Lakota.
We've shown you 3 materials relating to Wóoyake, how they are used on the website, and 2 ways the community have used them outside the website. We know that there's going to be other uses of Wooyake, such as in classrooms, in homes, with families, or in self-study. We don't know about all these use cases because no one in the community has to ask our permission to reconnect with these recordings. And as we continue to upload recordings, more connections between them, like the one forged by Nacole's grandfather, will become apparent.
So please do reach out to us if you'd like to know more. We encourage you to look into Mercadoo, which was developed by our Waramungu relatives in Australia in collaboration with Washington State University, and also look into local contexts who created the traditional knowledge labels. Finally, a note to say that this project was facilitated by the staff in the EAPI program at the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe with financial support from the National Archives and Records Administration, Joint Advisory Tribal Committee, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Thanks also to the collective of over 20 tribal members, mostly Standing Rockers, who have worked on it, and the Standing Rock employees who helped administer our grant. Finally, wopila, our gratitude to you all for listening to our ideas, and we look forward to your questions.